Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of The Crystal Goddess. My name's Lara de-Leuw, and today we're going to be talking about why has my gem changed colour? Why has my crystal changed colour? Why has it changed colour? There are numerous reasons why your jewellery or your crystals can change colour. If you think about it, these are things that have been buried in the ground for millions of years, and there is a potential that if it wasn't for humans, they would never have seen the light of day, ever. And that's the first thing that can affect a gemstone is daylight. It can have quite a dramatic effect as well. So daylight has a tendency to be able to fade gemstones. If you take, for example, this beauty here, this was a really dark amethyst when I first got it. Now, for some reason, and I know lots of people who do it, I am one of those people, we have a tendency of putting our beautiful quartzes or amethysts or citrines and our beautiful geodes in the window. Yes, sunlight is a way of charging your crystals, but it's also a way of damaging your crystals and changing the colour completely beyond recognition. So my advice is do not put them in the windowsill, keep them away from direct light. So heat from the sun and direct light from the sun can have an effect on your crystals. It can change the colour. In a tanzanite, for example, it can lighten a tanzanite, it can lighten an amethyst, it can lighten a citrine. It often bleaches colours out. It can also do the same with chalcedonies, especially if they are dyed, and agates as well. So you don't want to be putting crystals or your jewellery into direct sunlight. In relation to that, if you have it as jewellery and you're going on holiday and it's a hot country, you might want to leave your jewellery away from the hot temperatures and the very bright direct sunlight, because again, if you can of course take it with you, but I had a lady a number of years ago who contacted me asking why, when she'd gone on holiday to a tropical beach for 2 weeks and wore her tanzanite every single day, why it was no longer the colour that it was originally. It's because of the direct sunlight. It does have a predominant and quite a massive dramatic effect on it. The other thing that can affect the colour of your crystals and gemstones and jewellery is heat. Heat can have quite a big effect again. If you think about it, heat treatment is one of the oldest treatments that's ever been used for gemstones. Originally it was used for sapphire. Now that was either to heighten the colour of the sapphire or to make it duller. Not duller. So lighten it in one way and darken it in another. That makes more sense. So not heighten, but lighten. So if it was too dark, if you heated it with certain elements, you could then bring that lightness back into the stone. And the same if you did something quite similar, but in a different way. You could actually darken the colour. And you can also clear out little rutile elements as well. They seem to fade quite nicely. So if you have a cloudy stone, you can make it clearer. So heat treatment is something that's been done for gemstones for many, many years. And actually, in some cases, is no longer sort of classed as a treatment. It is still a treatment, but they don't tend to record it as a treatment because it's just a given that it will be done. Again, for example, sapphires, you kind of expect that a sapphire is going to be heat treated. If it's not, bonus. There's no problem with heat treatment, it's great, and it just makes the stones look fantastic. But if you think about it, again, heat can have an effect on your gemstones. For example, I love emeralds. Emeralds can be affected by heat quite dramatically again. So I did have a beautiful emerald that I loved, and it was two-tone. One part of it was like a yellowy green, and the other part was more of a bluey green, and it had this quite dramatic difference in between. I put it in a very warm space near a radiator. I didn't know better at the time. I do now. When I came back to wearing it a little while later, a number of years later, it was not the same as it was when it first sat there. It was now uniform green. So the heat from that radiator over those years had had an effect on the emerald, and it was no longer two tones. It was no longer yellow green and blue green. It was a beautiful green, but it didn't have that personality. Now they say you can tell your emerald in 100 emeralds because they're so characteristic and so personal to you. I wouldn't have recognised my emerald at all after that. I wouldn't have recognised it. It was almost like it was a completely different stone entirely. So heat can have an effect. So don't put your gemstones in extreme temperatures. That can help. It really can. So if you don't want your gem to change colour, light, keep it out of direct sunlight, keep it out of direct heat. And there are other things that can change your stone's colour as well. Now, your stone might actually be dyed. And if that is the case, you don't want to submerge it in water. Dyes will naturally fade over time anyway, but if you're going to be popping it in water, you're probably going to find that those dyes will end up bleaching out a lot quicker and a lot sooner. You also don't want to have perfumes, skin creams, makeup, detergents or anything like that close to stones that have been dyed or are porous, because the dye will start to be affected, and also if it is porous and it's not dyed, the stone will be affected. So for example, if you had, I'm going to use coral as an example. So if you had coral and you popped it, perfect example, and really, when we went on my honeymoon, we went into a jewellery shop, so I wanted to have a look at the kind of prices that they were over there. We were in Dubai. And they offered to clean my jewellery for me. Now, I had a coral ring at the time. I love this coral ring. And I said, please don't put it in, you know, they have that solution bath that they put it in. And I said, please don't put it in, it will get damaged. No, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. No, please don't put it, no, it's fine, plop. It was not fine. It was not fine. And later I found out that they actually had no idea what gemstone was what, and they were just going by what was said on the little authenticity cards. And so he had no idea that it would not be fine. But if you have something like a coral or a pearl, oh, I wish I hadn't remembered that. It was such a beautiful coral. It was such a beautiful coral. It was actually an antique, so don't worry, no corals of this day and age, no protected species were harmed in the making of that coral. It was a family heirloom that is no more. No more what it used to be anyway. Yeah, so if you don't want an experience like that, make sure you don't let porous gemstones go into a jewellery bath. It's not a good thing for it. The other thing is, so pearls will be affected by that, corals will be affected by that. Things like jadeite as well, because that is quite a porous stone, because it's multicrystalline or polycrystalline, you will find that can have an effect. So what we've covered heat, we've covered light, we've covered porous gemstones. I'm not gonna forget that now. I think that is the majority of it. So heat, light, and chemicals can affect it. So treat your gemstones nicely. The reason I'm doing this one is because there was a comment on a forum, I think it was, forum or a group on Facebook. And the question was, does anybody know about crystals that can change colour? And the lady actually put a picture of some of her crystals that she'd sent to somebody to be charged with his quartz orb. And quartz is an interesting one, and this is why I've kind of, if you look back at the cleansing and the charging videos, I do and I don't like using it, because it's both piezoelectric and pyroelectric, which means if it's put under pressure it can produce electricity and latent heat, and also it can produce a magnetic surround. I can't think of the word. It can produce a magnetic field, quite strong magnetic fields, and the polarities can fluctuate depending on the situation, whether you're holding it. So that will determine whether it is giving or receiving energy. So the way this had been set up is there was an orb in the centre, and then there were the crystals around the outside. And what it looked like from the picture is one of these crystals had definitely turned colour. The rest were clear. And the orb looked like it was the same colour as the crystal, which seemed to be pointing to a window. I can't be sure because it wasn't showing it clearly in the picture. But the potential for what could have happened there to have changed the stone. So we talked about, I think I've talked about smoky quartz in the past, where if a quartz has impurities of aluminium, then if it's naturally radiated by the surrounding rock, it will turn to smoky quartz. So the potential there is it's drawn on the sun energy, which is natural radiation anyway, and it could have had the aluminium inclusions, which could have started to affect those in there, hazing up the quartz and creating almost, it wasn't quite a smoky quartz effect, it was just slight grey was starting to come through. But because of the way the polarities could have been in the crystal, it was taking the light energy and then transmuting it and amplifying it to the orb in the centre, which in turn potentially had those aluminium inclusions and could also have affected the colour of those. Why did it not affect the crystals around the outside? Well, two reasons could be. The polarities of them were facing in the opposite direction, so they weren't drawing energy from the orb, they were actually drawing energy from outside, which is what the first one seemed to be doing. So he'd got them back to front, or she'd got them back to front, whoever it was. And the other thing is they might not have had the aluminium impurities. So heat, daylight, big one, can have a massive effect on the colouring of your stone, whether that's lightening the colouring of your stone or whether that's actually turning your beautiful clear quartz hazy and a little bit it does have a massive effect. I would be very interested actually to see how many people have seen that kind of effect in their clear quartzes, or if they've had amethysts that have changed colour completely, and why you think it might be the case. So please do put your comments below. I would love to know how many people have had this happen to them, and if you've got any questions, pop that below as well. I'd love to do a video for you to try and help in any way I can. In the meantime, I look forward very much to seeing you on the next Crystal Goddess, and if you could like, subscribe and share, I would be very, very grateful. Thank you so much for joining me. Big love to all. Mwah.